It's always just so exciting to be a part of a church as generous and as giving as this one, not just, again, with the financial gifts, but with your time and your talent as well. And so for the next few weeks, we're actually going to talk about money, and we're calling this series Money Talks because it does, right? I mean, we all have heard that phrase before, money talks, and your money is saying things all the time. Your money is saying things, it's gaining access to things. Your money is talking about power. Your money is talking about security. Your money talks all the time, and it says a lot, and it says not just those things, but it says a lot about you. My money says a lot about me. In fact, our money and our calendar say far more about us than we want to admit or believe or acknowledge. Sharon, I had a friend in Texas who was this wise lady, and she used to always say, if you want to know what somebody really believes, look at their bank account statement and their calendar, and that'll tell you. And there's a lot of truth to that because we invest our time and our money in things that are really, really important to us. So our money talks. Our money talks about us. It talks about what we believe. It talks about who we trust. It talks about what we love. Our money's talking about who we serve. And this is why Jesus talked more about money than almost any other subject. In fact, if you added up all the things Jesus said about heaven and hell combined, Jesus talked about money more than that. But he never asked for money. So he talked a lot about it, but he never asked for money. And that's really important because what was Jesus trying to do? Jesus was not trying to get people's money from them. He wanted them to understand some important key truths about their money and about what their money was saying. Because here's the thing, and if you're not a believer, you're not a Jesus follower, listen, you are off the hook, okay? You don't text give, just listen to this because I'm talking to those people who say, hey, I follow Jesus. Jesus wanted you to know that your money says more about what you believe than what your mouth does. Your money says so much about what you believe, and it has such deep spiritual connotations about who you are and who you serve and what you love. Jesus taught that there was a direct link between your money and your heart, that the way you handle your money is rooted in what you believe about money, and what you believe about money is directly linked to your heart. Now, all of us in here have different stories, different backgrounds, different experiences. Some of you may have been raised with families where you never worried about where a meal was coming from. Some of you may have been raised in families and cultures where, man, every day the whole struggle was just to make sure that everybody could get enough to eat to survive to see another day. And it doesn't matter. See, this is the thing. It doesn't matter how much or how little you have. The money that you possess still is saying something about your heart. And Jesus wanted us to know that. This is why Jesus never commended people just because they were poor. He never commended people just because they were rich. In fact, he pointed, and we're going to look at two stories today, two encounters that Jesus had, where he actually blows this idea up that it has something to do with the amount of money you have in your bank account. It has something far more serious to do than just a dollar number, just a dollar amount. When we can understand why people deal with money the way they do, we get a window into the working of the human heart, which creates the potential to make tremendous change in people and therefore to make a real difference in the world. Jesus knew this. This is why he talked about it. Because he said, hey, if I can change the way you think about your money, that's going to have a direct impact on your heart. And if I can get to your heart, then out of your heart can flow an opportunity to see change in you, in your family, in your community, and around the world. I love this quote. It's kind of a long quote, but I want to read it to you. It's from an author. His name is Christian Smith. The book is called Passing the Plate. It's one of the suggested readings on your bulletin today. We always put a few little suggestions in here every time we do a series, a few things that if you want to read more or learn more, there are books listed there. Also some scripture passages if you're wanting to do some daily reading this week just to find out some other passages where these things are talked about. But let me read you this quote. It's a little bit long, but it's really, really powerful and very, very convicting for those of us who say we're following Jesus, because he is talking directly to us. He's talking directly to our church. And this is what he says. If American Christians, so he's being very specific. He's not even just talking about Christians in general. He's just talking about Christians that live in the United States. If American Christians were to give from their income generously, not lavishly, mind you, only generously, they could transform the world starting right away. Ordinary American Christians have within their power the capacity to foster massive and unprecedented spiritual, social, cultural, and economic change that closely reflects their values and their interests. Now, notice what he said here, that Christians just giving generously could have tremendous impact on the world in positive ways, in ways that align with our values and interests. Listen what he goes on. In order to achieve such dramatic world-transforming change, ordinary, he didn't say rich, he doesn't say poor, he just says ordinary. So if you consider yourself ordinary, this is talking to you of ordinary Christians. Simply need to do one thing: start giving reasonably generously. Now notice he's qualified. It wasn't lavish, it was just generously. Now it's not even just generously. It's reasonably generously from their income. Let us say 10% from their post-tax income. Fostering such change could begin immediately. It would not, now listen to this, it would not require getting Congress or the United Nations to act. It would not require a military mobilization or waiting for a majority turnover in the Supreme Court. It would only require ordinary Christians from one country to start doing something that seems entirely within their power, and that most of them, according to the teachings of their own faith traditions, ought to already be doing anyway: giving generously from the financial resources with which they have been blessed. I think it's interesting, and we're not going to get into politics, but we're going to get into politics for just a second. I think it's so interesting to me and so disturbing to me, too, that so many of our churches, and again, I'm just talking to Christians, so, we can criticize each other, right? We can talk honestly with each other. That so many churches have invested so much time and energy into political agendas and getting the right people elected, when the truth is, I think what Christian Smith is saying here is true. If we would simply do what Jesus called us to do with our money, we could impact society in a greater way than any government has ever impacted the world before. We don't have to have legislation passed. We just have to simply do what Jesus has modeled for us in his life and live our lives in such a way that our money is telling a better story about me, about my family, about our church, and about the Savior that we say we serve. And Jesus talked about this. He laid this out for us. He said, guys, this is really, really important, because it's not just your person. See, we get so wrapped up when we talk about money, like this is just my personal business. Like, right? We don't want to talk about this with other people. And we get very uncomfortable when other people talk about it, especially when they're the preacher standing in front of you and you think he's about to ask me for a lot of money. I'm not. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you just to invite, for the next few weeks, to invite God to speak to your heart and to reveal to you what your money is saying about what you actually believe, who you're serving, and what matters most to you. Because I believe this. I believe that we, the church, could make unprecedented change in the world if we simply did what Jesus called us to do. I believe that Southside Baptist Church, we're not a huge church, but that Southside Baptist Church, we could make a tremendous difference, and are making a tremendous difference, but even greater difference if we simply did what Jesus was calling us to do. And that is to allow our money to tell the beautiful story of the gospel. So for the next few weeks, we're going to consider what our money is saying about us. And we're going to start out today by something that you might push back on. In fact, I'm going to guess that most of you are going to push back on this idea, but the truth is, this is what your money is saying. Your money is constantly telling people around the world, your money is telling everybody. You don't want your money to say this, but let me tell you, your money is telling people this. Your money is telling people that you are rich. It is. You're like, no way. You have not seen my bank statement. Like my bank statement, my financial accountant is telling I am poor. Let me tell you, your money is telling everybody that you're rich. Let me just give you some background on this idea. Gallup did a survey a few years ago in which everybody interviewed was asked to define rich. Almost every person surveyed defined rich as roughly double the amount possessed by the person defining it. So if the person asked to define it made $30,000 a year, well, guess how much rich was to them? $60,000 a year. If the person had $60,000 a year, made $60,000, guess how much was rich to them? $120,000 a year, right. Now, we're not going to do the math beyond that. It gets very complicated. But here's the point. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Everybody defining rich defined it as twice the amount they had. It was a constantly moving target. It always was moving upward. Another author says this: rich is the other guy. Rich is that other family. Rich isn't just having extra. Rich is having as much extra as the person who has more extra than you currently have. If that's the case, listen to this. If that's the case, you can be rich and not know it. You can be rich and not feel it. You can be rich and not act like it. And that is a problem. Because when we as Christians deny the fact that our money is saying that we're rich, when we deny that that's true, then we somehow excuse ourselves from all the things Jesus has to say about money. Because whenever Jesus or the scriptures talk about money, we're like, well, he's talking about rich people, and I'm not rich. Well, how do you know you're not rich? Because rich is twice as much as I make. If I made twice as much as I make, then Jesus would be talking to me. But because I don't make that much money, Jesus isn't talking to me. Let me clue you in on here on something. Jesus is talking to all of you because you are rich. And listen to what the Apostle Paul said. So the Apostle Paul was this guy who was not a believer, not a follower in Jesus. He had lots of power, lots of status, lots of privilege. But the Apostle Paul had this radical encounter with Jesus. Like he was somebody who was trying to stamp out the church. He was trying to persecute, arrest believers, followers of Jesus. And he had this meeting with Jesus, became a follower of Jesus, went around planting churches in all these communities. And as he would plant churches, he would find some people that he could put in charge to lead the church. So in the church at Ephesus, he put a young man named Timothy in charge to pastor this church. And as he's writing to Timothy, he's giving him instructions. And he tells Timothy, hey, when you're teaching, when you're talking to your church, you need to make sure you talk to one specific group of people. It's really important that they understand this. And the reason Paul said this was so important is because Paul understood what Jesus talked about and what was important to Jesus. And so Paul is just trying to tell Timothy what was important. And here's what he said in 1 Peter chapter 6, verse 17. If you have a Bible you can open, you can follow along on the screens as well. He said, command those who are rich. So, Timothy, here's what I need you to do. When you're talking to your church, I need you to make sure that you specifically talk to the rich people. It's very, very important. Why? Because their money's talking. Their money is saying a lot about them, but their money is also saying something about the Savior that they claim to be following. So it's really important, Timothy, that you talk to the rich people. Command those who are rich in this present world. So he's not trying to spiritualize this. Because, you've heard people do this. Well, I'm rich in the kingdom. Paul's like, no. Let's throw out all the religious jargon. We're just talking about worldly wealth. Let's talk about dollars in the bank account. Let's talk about how many cars. Let's talk about their houses. Let's talk about their stuff. We're not going to spiritualize this. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant nor to put their hope in wealth. Because isn't that what we do? Like that's where we start placing our hope. We start putting our hope in the wealth, which is so, what's that next word? Uncertain. Isn't it uncertain? Like, do you remember, this seems like a long time ago, but do you remember like 2019 before the pandemic? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? Do you remember how life was? And do you remember how in just almost a matter of minutes it seemed like the world changed? Everything turned upside. Do you know how uncertain this world is? And what's Paul saying? Paul's saying to Timothy, hey, Timothy, you need to remind them. They think their wealth is all about security. They think their wealth gives them some sort of privilege and keeps them safe. But let me tell you, you need to remind those rich people that their wealth in this world is uncertain. But put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our, what's that word? Enjoyment. Isn't this interesting? That Jesus isn't trying to be a cosmic killjoy here and say, let's suck all the fun out of life. He's saying God's giving you things for your enjoyment. It's okay to enjoy them. But there's something you really need to understand. That's not where your security doesn't come in the stuff that you enjoy, but in God who gives us everything that we enjoy. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation. He's directly quoting Jesus here. Lay up a treasure for themselves for a firm foundation for a coming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly life. See, don't we equate life with sort of our stuff and wealth? Like living the life, right? Or living the dream, right? Because you got the opportunity, maybe you've got a vacation, and man, this is the life. That's what we say. This is the life. When we say that, what do we mean? It means, look what our wealth has bought for us. Look at the satisfaction of the joy that our wealth has afforded us. And what Paul is telling Timothy is, hey, those things are good. Those things that you can enjoy, but those things are temporary. They do not last. Instead, you need to take hold of life that is truly life. Life that doesn't end, that isn't temporary, but it's permanent. See, here's the problem with this passage, though. And it's the problem that we all have. We don't think this passage is talking about us. And as long as we do not believe we're rich, as long as we do not believe this passage is talking about us, then we will never experience the freedom and the hope that Jesus wants us to understand. Now, how does this happen? How do we convince ourselves that we are not among the rich? Well, I want to start with just a very basic idea. Many of you probably saw this or studied this in psychology, if you ever took a psychology class, but Abraham Maslow has what is called the hierarchy of need. In fact, we'll put it up here on the screen. The hierarchy of need looks like this. And here was the idea. Now, Maslow didn't invent this. He just discovered this. This is like embedded and ingrained into human existence, okay? This is hardwired, which I believe it's the way God hardwired us. And I think we can even see this in the scripture and in the Bible. So we start at the bottom here, sort of physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. All those things that all living creatures need or want. Water, you've got to have water. If you had $1 million in your bank account, if you had all the financial security that you could want in the world, but you were dying of thirst, you would trade it all for water, right? I mean, it's like if you don't have those things, life doesn't persist. So those things are really important, physiological needs. In fact, one of the things you see in Jesus' ministry is that he never, ever addresses anybody without first meeting their physical need. So if they're hungry, he feeds them. If they've got some sort of physical deformity or physical limitation, he heals them. He is constantly addressing the physiological needs in order to address the spiritual needs, because Jesus, who is the one who created us, understands that unless those needs are met, we can't even perceive of anything past them. Some of you are already hungry and you're not going to listen to anything else I say. You're just like, when are we going to get to lunch? Because I did not eat breakfast, right? You can't even hear the words I'm saying because you're hungry. This is the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So from there you go up to personal security, employment, resources, health, property, safety needs. Like we want to be safe. We want to know that we're secure. Once those needs are met, then our appetite grows and it moves to love and belonging. Well, hey, I've got food, I've got water, I've got clothing, I've got personal security, I've got a job, I've got health. Now I want friendships, intimacy, family, a sense of connection, love, and belonging. This is something we all want. And then once we feel like we've got those things, then our appetite grows and it goes to esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. None of those things are bad. I mean, those are things that we would all want, and we might even want them for others. And then from there, it goes to self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. Now, this is where Maslow stopped. But in fact, Jesus said there's something beyond this. There's self-transcendence, meaning that you get to the point where all of a sudden, your greatest wants and desires are no longer for your physical well-being, safety, love, esteem, or even being the most that you can be. But suddenly, you get to this point where your desire is for the good of others. Your desire is to say, how can I see that others' needs are met? How can I begin to see that a group of people, a church, a community, a city, a nation, the world, how can I begin to see that this is a better place because of what I am able to do and the way I'm able to leverage all those things that I have accumulated? How can I leverage them for the good of other people? This is why Jesus talked about this connection with our heart. Because this idea that our money is talking, it tells us exactly where we are. If you meet a child, for example, who is hungry, if you meet a family who doesn't have shelter, their whole desire is to find shelter, to find food. They're not able to move much past that because they know those desires are so instinctual. This is why Jesus is saying your money is talking about you. Your money is talking about you right now. And here's the thing. Once things that we want turn into things that we desire turn into expectations, and that keeps driving us for more and more and more as our needs are met. So your needs will actually become things that you want, and then wants turns into dreams, and dreams that turn into hope. So when our needs are met, our appetites do not turn off. When I am fed, I will be hungry again. After I get a drink of water, I'm going to be thirsty again. Appetites continue to grow as they're fed. And so this can be true on a personal level. It can be true on a church, a family. It can be true on a national level. In fact, some of you may remember back several years ago, you still see this protest when you deal with economic issues and social justice issues. You can find this 1% versus the 99%. And in fact, we've got a picture here. And this idea being that 1% of the global population controls the dominant amount of wealth. And again, we're not going to get into that. But here's what I think we forget living in America. That if you live in America, you probably are globally in the top 5%. You have more wealth, even the poorest among us has more wealth than most people in this world will ever dream about. In fact, let me just look at it from a global historic perspective. Do you know the whole idea of a 5-day work week is unique in the history of the world? If you live in a culture and a society where you are expected, and you only expect to have to work 5 days a week, you are in the minority already. One person working 5 days to support a family for 7 days is unprecedented. We think, well, that's a pretty low bar. Exactly. There are places in this world today, many places in this world today, where if people do not work that day, their family does not eat that night. If they are not finding work to do that day, they do not have a place to sleep in shelter and security that evening. That is the majority of the world. But as long as we live in the culture in which we live, we're constantly told, no. No, the bar is so much higher. The bar is this dollar amount, double what you make. It's this kind of house. It's this kind of car. There's constantly all these things telling us, no, it's more and more and more. And as long as we keep chasing that more, well, our desire, our goal for being generous keeps moving out further. Well, when I have this much money, then I'll be secure enough to be generous. And then we get to that amount of money, and the bar's moved again. Well, when I get this amount of money, then I'll have enough to be generous. And it keeps moving. Meanwhile, your money is talking about you the whole time. In Christian Smith's book, Passing the Plate, he says this, that the richer people become, the smaller the percentage of the money they give away. This has been proven in statistics and reports and studies for years and years and years. That based on a percentage, poorer people are more generous than rich people. Why? Because rich people begin to look at their wealth and begin to see, I need more security, I need more comfort, I need more, and the appetite only grows the more we possess. This is why any of you who've ever gone on a mission trip with us or with another organization, you are, one of the things I hear constantly, and one of the things I feel constantly when I'm in a different country, is I'm always astounded at the generosity of the people. And they're poor. I mean, by my, not just by my standards, but by the world standards, they're poor. But they're incredibly generous. They will give you everything they've got because they are generous. And when you come to a wealthy country, what you find is people begin to get very possessive about their possessions, and their money is talking about them, and it's not telling a good story. And if you're not a Christian, that's okay. You may be fine with that story. But for those of us who say we follow Jesus, we need to be listening to the story our money is telling about us. Because here's the truth. And this is true if you're a Christian or you're not a Christian. Because if you're not a Christian, you're chasing this goal, and it keeps moving higher and higher and higher. But until you are satisfied in Jesus, your heart will never be satisfied at all. Christian, until you are satisfied and secure in Jesus, no amount of money will ever satisfy you or make you secure. Non-believer, until you are satisfied in Jesus, there is not a dollar amount that you can have in your bank account that will make you feel secure enough or comfortable enough. So what's the solution? Here's the solution. Acknowledge what 90% of the world already knows about you. You are rich. That's the key. You have to accept the fact that you're rich in order to hear everything else that Jesus wants to tell you, that Paul is telling Timothy to tell his church. You have to understand first that I am rich. Once I agree, once I accept that reality, then and only then will I hear the other things that the Scripture is telling me about my money. Let me tell you one quick story and one quick encounter Jesus had to demonstrate this. Because see, Jesus never looked at it as a dollar amount. Jesus never looked at wealth as a number. He always looked at it as a condition of the heart. So you may remember this one story where Jesus was going into the temple, and he was with his posse, and they were looking around, and it was time to collect the offering. And so all the people were coming up, making a big show of putting their offering in these buckets. They had these big metal buckets, and when you dropped the coins, and all their money was in the form of coins, into the bucket, it just made all this noise. So they were dropping their coins in the bucket, making a big show of it. Jesus noticed that one little woman snuck up, and she just had a couple pennies, and she dropped them in, hardly made a noise at all. And Jesus pointed to her and told his disciples, he said, "Do you see that woman right there? She just gave more than everybody else." Now, this woman was, by our standards, and by their standards of the first century, she was poor. But Jesus just said, no. She just made the most lavish gift of anybody because they gave out of their extra. She gave out of her poverty. And then there's another story that Jesus told. He told this story about a master who was going away. And he said, hey, I've got a lot of wealth. I need to entrust it to some servants before I go. So he got one servant, gave him 10 talents to entrust him to. The next one he gave 5, and the last one he gave 2. So now, if we think about this, Jesus just applauded basically an economically depressed person in the widow's mite story. In this story, you see this person who was given a lot, 10 compared to the person who only got 2. But what Jesus did in this story is he said, hey, the person who had 10 talents went out and invested them and made them grow. The person who only had 2 buried them, did nothing with them. He was so worried and consumed with his poverty, his money was telling him that he was poor. So when the master came back, he looked at the guy who had 10 talents, invested it, and said, hey, this guy's done well. But the guy who only had 2 talents he did nothing with, he took it from him and gave it to the rich guy. So in these 2 examples, one encounter and one story, you see Jesus, he praises a poor woman and he praises a rich man who was given much. But in both, what you see is their money was talking. Their money was talking about how wealthy they were, not in the world's terms, but in the terms of the kingdom. The widow with her mite was wealthy. The wealthy guy with the 10 talents entrusted to him was wealthy. The guy with only 2 talents who thought he was poor not because he only had 2 talents. He was poor because he didn't believe the truth that he was in fact rich because of what God had entrusted to him, what God had given him. See, it is not what you have, but what you do with what you have that matters. You may be in here and you may think, I am struggling this week just to make ends meet. Or you may be in here and think, man, I am secure, my kids are secure, my grandkids are secure. But here's the truth. Your wealth is not dependent on how much you have, but with what you do with what you have. You aren't asked to be faithful with what you don't have. Let me say that one more time. Because I think sometimes we hear messages like this, and no matter how much money we have or how little money we have, we feel guilty. But the truth is, God is only asking you to be faithful with what he has entrusted to you. He wasn't asking the guy with 2 talents to be faithful with 10 talents. He was asking him to be faithful with the 2 talents. God is asking you to be faithful with what he has given you. Because here's the truth. Wealth is not a number, it's a condition of your heart. Wealth is not a number, it is a condition of your heart. Here's what Jesus said. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Do not lay up for yourself treasure in heaven where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Did you catch that? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Your money's talking about you. Your money's talking about the condition of your heart. Jesus said, just follow the money. It is saying what the condition of a person's heart is. So what are you going to do? Well, I hope, first of all, I know when I start a series on money, if I ever say how many weeks it is, they're like, okay, I can miss the next 2 weeks. He's talking about money for 2 weeks. I'm out, right? Marriage was great. My wife sure needed to hear that. But money, don't do that. Don't do that. Because here's the truth. You need to know what your money is saying. You need to know what your money is saying in order for you to be able to speak into your money for it to tell a better story. So I'm going to encourage you to come back for the next couple weeks, but I'm going to give you some homework, okay? And the first homework, some of you will love and some of you will hate. See, so much about our spirituality is so hard to figure out, right? I mean, when you start talking about prayer, it's like, man, how do you calculate prayer? Is it by, how do you calculate the effectiveness of prayer? How much time I should be spending in prayer? How do you calculate, like, understanding Scripture? There's no, like, SAT for Bible. I mean, how do you figure this discipleship thing out? Can I tell you, when it comes to our money, when it comes to this topic, it's actually very easy. And I'm going to challenge you to do this. For the next week or the next month, you decide how long, it doesn't matter. Just write down everything you spend. Keep track of every receipt, every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. And just ask yourself this question at the end of the week or at the end of the month. Ask yourself this question. What is my money saying about the condition of my heart? What is my money saying? And now some of you are like, well, man, I better make sure I give something to somebody this week. So it says something. But isn't that the point? As long as you are not conscious of what your money is saying, your money will continue to talk, but it won't be telling the story you want it to tell. So just for the next week, 2 weeks, a month, keep track of all the money you spend and ask yourself, what is my money saying about the condition of my heart? The other thing that we're going to do collectively, and we did this, some of you remember this a few years ago, it's actually been several years ago now, we have this jar that we called our Making Change jar. We're going to do it again. Let me tell you how it works. You determine, and I've already had a millennial text me and like, hey, you need to give something for the millennials because we don't deal in cash. So I don't know what to tell you, millennial. I'm a Gen Xer, so we still live in two worlds, right? We got the debit card and we still got some cash. But let me give you this idea. And any change you get, don't spend it between now and Christmas, all right? And if you are somebody who says, you know what, I'm just not going to go with coins because there's a coin shortage. So some of you may say, hey, anything less than a 5. Like, I'm not going to spend $1 bills. I'm not going to spend singles. Some of you may say, I'm not going to spend 5s. Whatever it is for you, anything below that, don't spend it. Instead, save it up and every Sunday bring it and put it in this jar. Now, some of you are like, I only use debit cards. This is killing me. I just don't know what to tell you. I haven't thought through this enough to figure that out. So some creative person out there, help me with this and figure out what I can do with plastic on this. We'll figure it out. But bring it every week and just put it in this jar. Now, this is not your offering. This is not going to the church, okay? At the end of the year, we are going to look and we're going to say, where is, and I believe God provided us several years ago with a family. It was clear this was a family of refugees that had moved here from out of the country. The wife was had some health problems. We found out that the husband was actually taking his wife to church, or taking his wife to the doctor on his bicycle. And so we took all that money. We actually bought them a used car with the money in this jar. And it was able to, it was amazing. Some of you remember that story. It was unbelievable. I don't know what it's going to be this year. We're just going to trust that God's going to show us. But for the next few months, don't spend any change. It could be coins, it could be single dollar bills or $5, whatever it is. Don't spend any change. Just bring it all and put it in here. And let's see what our loose change that most of us just forget about. Let's see what our loose change has to say, what story our loose change can tell. Because I'm convinced of this. If we, the church, will begin to understand and believe that our money can tell a better story than our political action committees can. Come on. Our money as Christians, if you're not a Christian, not you, but our money as Christians can tell better stories if we will just let our money speak of the generosity of the gospel. So I would encourage you to bring your money. Another thing you can do, let's pick one of these books on our suggested reading and just read a book about this subject. And some of you who are here today, listen, here's what your money is telling people about you. That you are in prison, that you're in bondage, because you live in so much debt that your money is just, it's your jailer. And it's telling a story about you being a slave. And Jesus wants you to be free from that. So here's what I wanted you to do. I want you to reach out to somebody. I want you to call us, reach out to us, let us know. We got resources that can help you. Not just meet a temporary need that's just going to be another need, but can help you understand how you can better manage your money in such a way that it will tell a better story about who you are. In fact, Financial Peace University is something that we offer here. It's coming in January. Mark your calendar. You want to be a part of Financial Peace University. We'll be offering that on Wednesday nights coming up in January. And it's not just about your money. It's also about your time. I want to challenge you. Let your life tell a better story. In fact, we've got an opportunity with Go Jacks coming up on October 2nd. And Susan, I trust you're here somewhere. There you are. Come on up, Susan. I want Susan to tell you a little bit about Go Jacks. I'm looking for a microphone here. Okay, you know where it is. I don't, so I'll let you grab it. Everybody, Susan is one of our brand new staff members. Of course, she's been at the church a long time. She runs our ESL program, does an awesome job. But would you just welcome Susan Russo?
Hey, everybody. This is better than in the first service because I had to stand behind the podium.
Yeah, it feels,
like this.
yeah. Yeah, there's a little height disparity, so sorry about that. So tell us about Go Jacks, Susan. For those who don't have any idea what it is, just give them an idea what Go Jacks is about.
Okay, so Go Jacks is a way for us to serve our community, connect with people who we might not otherwise meet, love them, connect with them, and then we'll see what happens next.
Awesome. And it's telling a story about Jesus. It's not really about our church. There's more churches involved, is that right?
It's not. You will notice in your, are we calling this a bullet? What is it called?
Whatever you call it, they'll know.
This. To register for the event, which you should, so that we know you're coming. It's not on our church website. It's on gojacks.net website because it's not just us. It's not the Southside show. It's we're partnering with Parkwood Baptist, other churches throughout San Marco, and other churches throughout Arlington. So we're telling a bigger story of Jesus in our community than just Southside story.
Yeah, I think the tagline is serving the city in Jesus' name. So there are all kinds of projects. So like people are like, well, what will I do? What if I sign up for this? What am I doing? What am I going to be a part of?
There are a list on the website. There's a list of projects. We have something for everybody. We have things that are family friendly. If you are like, I want a completable task, well, we have a list of completable tasks at the towers, changing light bulbs, hanging pictures, things like that. But we also have things that are more relationship based, where we are really making connection with local people. So ESL mail reading, we're helping people sort their mail and understand what it says. And there's other outreach things with One More Child, Hadassah's Hope. If I start listing them, I'm going to forget somebody's favorite.
Yeah, and then you'll get in trouble.
There's indoor things, outdoor things, work things, sitting down things. There's something for everybody.
Yeah. So no matter how old you are, whatever you got to contribute, your time, your talent on Saturday, and it's all on one day. And the design behind that is just to demonstrate, give a physical demonstration of what the church can do and be in one day when we sort of set aside anything about our own identity as a church, but we work with the body of Christ in a larger way. And Susan has done an awesome job organizing this year. This is something we've done several years, and we are excited about it on October 7th. But you do need to sign up because that helps us to know how many to expect, T-shirts, all that kind of stuff is part of that as well.
Exactly. You can sign up. You can read through your list of projects. If you forget to sign up, you can show up on the day of. Please don't think, oh, I didn't register, so I can't go. No. Come anyway.
And listen, for those of you who just heard her say, oh, well, this way I can hedge my bets and not sign up and still show up if I have the time to do it, like, no. Don't do that to us. Sign up. Please sign up. It helps us a lot. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Susan, thank you so much for your leadership and your involvement in this project. We are really excited about Go Jacks, and we appreciate all ESL's kicking off, too, since you got some free airtime. Kicking off at the end of this month, right?
Yeah, it's kicking off Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Woo! Wednesday. We're doing registration, and then our first class is next week. We're doing classes here. We're doing classes online. We're doing classes in the Middle East. It's gonna be great. I'm so excited about it. Thank you to everyone who's involved.
All right. Thank you, Susan, for coming up, being a part. Awesome. So again, let me just challenge you to, when you think about your talent, you think about your time, you think about your treasure, just ask yourself, what is my money? What is my time? What is my talent, my treasure? What is it saying about what I believe? What is it saying about what I hope for my family, what I hope for this world? What is it saying about how much I trust God with the possessions He's entrusted to me? And just ask yourself, what story do you want to tell? It doesn't matter what story I want it to tell. It just matters, what story do you want it to tell? And then just ask yourself, what can I do to begin to tell a better story, for my money to tell a better story about me? Lots of ways to do it. We would love to connect with you and give you more information. If you, again, just text VIP, let us know. We'll reach out to you. If you care to give or contribute to any of these projects, you can text GIVE to that same number.